Alright everybody, I guess this is the end of Humanzee weekend. Now this video seems simple, but it's not. I'm going to first tell you guys some anime news, then stick around and we're going to do a deep and dark dive into the ancient urban legend of the Humanzee. So this is like a sandwich of anime news with a horrible, disturbing feeling of horror. Alright, so I'm basically doing this as a low-stakes promotion for the upcoming anime Darwin incident, which I'm hoping is very cool. It's not out yet, it's not coming out till next year, and I've only read the first chapter of the manga, but from what I read, I was kind of instantly hooked on it because it seems like this classic story, and it has the infinite potential to go anywhere, which is what I love about anime. And it plays out a few of the darker, crazier scenarios that I've messed around with in my own writing, and I'm excited for that. Now, Darwin Incident, the anime, was supposed to come out this year, but we just got a big update this week that it's unfortunately been delayed. It's now coming out in January of 2026, and the delay message was also bundled with a teaser trailer for the show, so I'm going to be sampling that for some images, and it looks like right now this is going to be my most hyped anime of 2026 so far. If you guys want to just hear about the anime, I guess skip ahead to this time on the timeline. Otherwise, for the rest of this video, I'm going to tell you guys what a Humanzee is, and the freaky, horrible backstory of that, because that's what this anime is about. Alright, so let me pitch you guys this story because it's kind of a doozy, and what I like about it is it's based on real events and the ethical quandary of the existence of the Humanzee. So once upon a time, 50 years ago, there was this mysterious creature called Oliver the Humanzee. Yes, Oliver the Humanzee, this big mysterious monkey that had 15 minutes of fame in the late 1970s. And his story was most popular in America where he lived, and it was second most popular in Japan because Japan was just really into that freaky shit. And everyone was like, oh my god, it's the Humanzee. Someone did it with a monkey. Now, the prevailing theory is that if lions and tigers can crossbreed to make ligers, and donkeys and zebras can make zonkies, and I think horses can also intermingle because that's like a big messy family tree, why can't humans crossbreed with monkeys? There's literally nothing stopping us. Well, the law is stopping you, and also is stopping you the fact that they're ugly and they don't like us, but we don't like them either, and I mean that in a no one likes them that way kind of way. So anyway, I hope you're not trying to date a monkey after this video. If you took that from this, you got the wrong message, and date women anyway. Now, Oliver was this big exception to the rule. As I pointed out in my review of the horrible monkey-human interspecies romance movie Better Man, monkeys are typically quadrupeds that walk on 4 legs, and seeing a chimpanzee that is bipedal, aka walking on 2 legs, is totally abnormal. And when I saw Better Man, I just thought, oh, that's not normal. But actually, as I looked into it more for this video, I actually found out the scientific reason is that chimpanzees have much smaller hips than humans, and their hips can't hold up their upper torsos. So it's actually physically impossible for a normal chimpanzee to walk on 2 legs for like more than a couple of minutes. But Oliver walked on 2 legs all the time, which freaked people out. On top of that, Oliver also had a bizarre head. His head was much smaller than the average ape, and he also had the suspiciously human quality of male pattern balding, which I guess, yeah, that does happen in some chimpanzees, but it happens very rarely because usually chimpanzees are so furry, so it's definitely a rare occurrence. Now, on top of these obvious quirks, Oliver also had a bunch of strange personality quirks, like if you told him to sit down, he would sit in a chair like a human. If you took him to the sink to eat dinner, he would wash his hands first like a good boy. He perceived dirt as dirty, and he was not interested in having sex with monkeys. He wanted to have sex with human women. Yes, unfortunately, the weird thing about Oliver was when he turned 16, he was only sexually attracted to human women. Apparently, because he was so attracted to human women, he actually died a virgin without ever reproducing with another female chimp. Now, let's put Oliver's story on hold a second because it's the mid-70s and everyone's like, holy fuck, what is this guy? Did someone do it with a monkey? Now, as soon as Oliver became famous, people thought long and hard about the implications of where the hell he came from and that Humanzees were a thing. And as Humanzees became public knowledge, mad scientists came out of their mad science holes and started doing some majorly creepy things to benefit the field of Humanzee science. Now, the first country that did some creepy shit was England. England did a study in the 80s, and they did some very disturbing research into the Humanzee concept. Now, they found out for their fucking around that it was possible for a human embryo to be taken out of a donor woman and deposited into the uterus of a chimpanzee, where it would apparently still grow into a baby. Now, this experiment was shut down at this point because it led to a million creepy, freaky questions, like, would the fetus have turned into a normal human, or would somehow the chimpanzee's mother's DNA somehow shape the human into a monkey person, a monkey-shaped person? And at the same time, if this is true that a chimpanzee could give birth to a human, is the same true in a reverse? Could a human woman be implanted with a chimpanzee embryo and give birth? I want to say the British study says yes. Meanwhile, apparently, since the 1960s, China has also been doing some creepy shit. Now, the Chinese studies into the Humanzee have been like insane, and because most of it's in Chinese and classified by the Communist Party, there's a lot of mysteries there. But they were trying to settle the question, and overall, the results of their research, at least from the 60s, have never been released to the international record. However, in a very disturbing update, apparently someone asked them to do it again in 2021, and they did. They created a half-human, half-chimp 50-50 embryo in a lab from a chimp father and a human mother, once again proving that it was totally possible. And once they proved it was possible, they aborted all the embryos after about a month. Now, meanwhile, in America, there's nothing really confirmed, but there's an urban legend that they were trying to make a Humanzee in Florida. The study goes that like one of the big universities in Florida inseminated a chimpanzee with some human sperm. I'm not exactly sure how that happened because it's Florida, and I can like imagine some devious shit going down in Florida. But anyway, supposedly, as the legend goes, the Humanzee was born in the university and killed upon sight because it was just so hideous. And that's totally an urban legend because it's got like the finesse to it. Anyway, after that, another scientist in the US decided he wanted to copyright Humanzees and make them into a product. I guess he was going to like sell them as slaves or something, but then the Supreme Court got involved and said that his patent for creating Humanzees was completely denied because the patent office thought that the human DNA in the Humanzees would otherwise qualify them as being legally protected human beings, which is another crazy thought experiment. How human must your DNA be for you to qualify for human rights? As time went on and DNA research became a bigger and bigger thing, more advanced along the time, even more fuck scientists came up to bat to try and fuck around with this Humanzee idea. Now, eventually at some time, genome alteration became a thing, and then some brilliant scientists had another absolutely horrifying idea. If you have the human genome and you have an animal genome and you study them both, the only difference between a human and a chimpanzee is 1.5% of their DNA. And if 1.5% of their DNA is the only thing wrong, then couldn't you just remove and alter that 1.5% of the chimpanzee's DNA and magically transform the chimpanzee into a human? Now that sounds completely batshit insane, but theoretically, if this experiment was carried out, it would then result into chimpanzees giving birth to other chimpanzees that looked 100% identical to a human and perhaps also had the potential to be humans, but they would be from a genetic chimpanzee lineage, which is another major mindfuck for like ethics and religion and what does it really mean to be human, etc., etc. Bring in the philosophers. All right, so yeah, all that's fucked. Let's go back to Oliver. Oliver was a really big deal in the 70s, and so Oliver was such a big deal that he became big in Japan. Now, in Japan, people were absolutely horrified that the Humanzee might have happened, so they spent like every penny they had to bring Oliver to Japan and make a spectacle out of him. So there was this huge major televised event where they flew Oliver to Japan, they put him on a plane, they gave him an airline dinner, and when he arrived, they dressed him in a kimono like the Beatles. So then they gave him a DNA test to see if he was human or not, and they played up the whole thing to make it a big reality TV spectacle. Now, Oliver's trip to Japan became so scandalous that eventually it became so well known in the public consciousness and such a big deal that a major pornography producer came out of the woodworks and came out with a JAV actress named Kumiko Yamaguchi and basically went into a press conference and announced that Kimiko Yamaguchi was going to breed with Oliver just to see what would happen. Would they create a quarter Humanzee or just another Humanzee if he actually was a chimp? And ultimately, Oliver's American owners were super offended by all this. Like, they were totally against the idea. They were not going to let their monkey sleep with a porn star. And they had no idea any of this was going on until the JAV actress showed up fresh as a daisy at their apartment, ready to do it. So, yeah, that's kind of hilarious. But ultimately, they tried to sue her and then she just apologized. And, it never, panned out. But, yeah, supposedly she never actually had sex with a monkey. It was just a publicity stunt to be like, oh, look at me, I'll do anything. And yeah, so that was just literally a publicity stunt for an old porno. And somehow it all made her famous enough that I guess they sold a lot of copies of that old porno. But she never did it. She apologized and she never ever had sex with a monkey. And she was very, very sorry she was willing to. Anyway, after this whole scandal with Kumiko Yamaguchi, the American owners decided that Oliver was more trouble than he was worth at this point, and also apparently they just weren't also making enough money exploiting him as they would have hoped. So Oliver ended up being sold to a science lab where they assumed he was going to be dissected or something, but no, the science lab thought he was interesting, so they put him in a jail cell for approximately 9 years. Now, while he was in jail, the science lab did a full study of Oliver in every way possible, and many people assume he was tortured, but there's no proof of that. But they ultimately found out that he wasn't a Humanzee or a normal chimpanzee. He was actually some kind of mutant chimpanzee, possibly the next level in chimpanzee evolution, or possibly a reverse step as well, or possibly some kind of branch step trying to be more human than chimpanzee. Either way, he did not have human DNA, so he was not a Humanzee, but he was not totally normal either. Now, after this, unfortunately, Oliver was still trapped in a jail cell for another decade, being experimented on by creeps. Until finally some activists got together and remembered Oliver from the old TV shows and decided to free him. So they got together, they got their money together, and they bought Oliver from the lab and sent him off to a rescue farm in Texas, I think, where supposedly he lived out the remainder of his years in peace with other monkeys running around a ranch. Of course, until he died, and then his organs and remains were dissected and scattered around the world again to figure out what the hell kind of mutant monkey he was all over again. So rest in peace, Oliver, whichever lab you're cut up inside. Anyway, so that was the super creepy story of Oliver the Humanzee and the numerous unethical attempts that ballsy scientists and kinky porn stars tried to make a Humanzee that might never have actually happened. If you're interested in some more about that, let's talk about this new anime, The Darwin Incident, which, like I said, is my most hyped anime of 2026 currently. And that sucks because they originally announced it in 2024, and I was hoping I would have already watched it by now. But yeah, if you thought any of that story about the Humanzee was cool or interesting, it would definitely make a much cooler anime. So that brings us to Darwin Incident. So yeah, as Humanzee and Humanzee Fever swept Japan in 1976, Darwin Incident is this kind of genius fucking story that posits, well, what if it all happened again, except more to the point, what if it happened again, and this time, it was an undeniable success story of, oh fuck, they definitely made a Humanzee this time. Now, I'm going to go light on the spoilers here, because Darwin Incident posits some what if fucked up mad scientist just made a Humanzee and nobody stopped him, and it was this undeniable, legal, world-changing incident. And then after that, this Humanzee was overall declared a human, like what happened in the patent copyright case that happened in America I just mentioned, because he had enough human DNA to qualify for human rights, and he was therefore declared human. Now, then the story posits that he was put into a foster family and forced to attend normal American human high school. And that's basically the premise that the manga starts on. So yeah, this manga follows a Humanzee named Charlie, and it goes into how unfortunate his life is being the world's only Humanzee. Now, I think the manga is set in Missouri, which is maybe a first for an anime, and Charlie seems to have slightly below average human intelligence, and it seems like he's kind of depressed and sad about his existence, and also weirded out by being a subhuman monster, and at the same time annoyed by being this pseudo-freak celebrity and never having like a moment of peace. Essentially, he's living the same life Oliver lived, except he can talk. And the manga keeps Charlie in this weird uncanny range where you can't tell if he's depressed or if he just can't emote on a full human level because of his animal feral nature. And then there's also the fact that he's attending this super cliche American high school, which sets him up immediately with a group of bullies who want to beat him up and hate him, even though he should have chimpanzee super strength. Now, there's also this singular girl named Lucy who's just kind of into him in an uncertain way, and I'm not quite sure what that's about. But if I'm being honest, after I finished reading this manga, I realized that a lot of the high school scenes super reminded me of like the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man film, in a wee bit of a way that I'm concerned that this manga might be written by a Japanese person who's never been to America and only knows it from like Spider-Man the movie. But fuck it, it's an entertaining story and I'm in. Now, the anime is set in slightly futuristic America, and probably the weirdest thing about it are the enemies that are established in the first volume. So at the start of the manga, we're introduced to this extreme terrorist cell of PETA called the Animal Liberation Army, which is just like PETA with guns. They gun down people with AK-47 to free animals. And honestly, as bad as things are getting, I could totally see PETA just like going there one day, like in an extremist sort of way. Even weirder than that are the show's main antagonist, the Vegan Army, which I'm not sure how they're connected to the ALA. I think they might be a sub-faction, or they might be associated with it. Or maybe the Vegan Army is like the main religious power over the ALA. But okay, so the Vegan Army has been this long-running joke in the anime community. Like, it started out on like Scott Pilgrim, that like he just joked that like his enemies were vegans. And then I also continued the joke myself by joking that the vegans in Gundam Age were actually vegans because it was just funny. But this anime is actually taking that concept seriously and also taking it up to the next level by establishing that in this future, there was this religious political movement that sprung up around the concept of veganism. And I want to say they turned veganism into a religion, and then this weird pseudo-military army. Now, I want to say by the allegorical and political reference that this manga presents, the Vegan Army seems to be a borderline religious political terrorist cell combining like the vegan diet, aspects of Antifa, aspects of jihad Muslimism, aspects of like the American Democrat Party and like woke policies. And yeah, the bad guys in this story, like they're literally like a MAGA Republican's wet nightmare the more and more I read it. But also they're led by this unhinged random black guy, and I swear to God, in the anime preview, it looks like they redesigned him slightly to look just a smidge more like Barack Obama. So whenever this anime comes out, I feel like it's going to be a powder keg of like some pretty nuts political controversies and some really hot takes, especially if it does get widespread distribution in America, where it's currently satirizing the hell out of current events. Anyway, so the Vegan Army seems to be out to capture Charlie and convert him into their god Jesus leader head of worship, because he's like literally the missing link between humans and animals, and that makes sense to them. And meanwhile, because of the Vegan Army's terrorist activities around America, a sort of Cold War McCarthyism has come up against people who are vegan naturally, on the basis that being a vegan is the first sign that you might potentially be a member of the Vegan Army. And of course, this includes Charlie, who is a vegan because of his weird Humanzee half animal state. And yeah, anyway, that's everything I got out of the first volume. I have no idea how long this manga goes on for. Currently, it looks like it's got 8 published volumes broken into about over 40 chapters. So potentially they could run this for any amount of time anime-wise. It could be 10 episodes, it could be 20, it could even be 50. It seems like it's your medium longish story. Anyway, the anime is coming out in January of 2026, and I absolutely can't wait to see what happens. If you can track down the first volume of the manga, I want to say the first 8 or so chapters are available stateside. And yeah, that's about all I have to say about Humanzee, I think. And I officially declare the end of Monkey Weekend. Now, I hope everyone learned not to like monkeys that way. Good night.